My name is Amber Calloway. I am 26 years old. And for close to 3 years, my own mom and dad got on the phone and called every single place I applied to work and told them I was a criminal. I wasn't. No record. No arrest. Not even a library fine. But by the time I hit 25, I was bunking in a women's shelter, scrubbing my hair over a gas station sink in the dead of winter, and running on one small meal a day because no hiring manager within driving distance would give me a shot. Every Tuesday morning without fail, my dad fired off the exact same text. Same words. Same tone. Get home. Apologize. Maybe I'll reconsider. Then one Tuesday, I'll never forget it. A stranger showed up at that shelter door and said 8 words that turned my whole world right side up. Your grandmother paid me to track you down. I'll get to what was locked up in that briefcase. But first, if this kind of story speaks to you, hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. And toss a comment down below telling me where in the world you're watching from. I genuinely love knowing. Alright. Let me bring you back with me. Back to Millhaven, Indiana. A town so small the gas station doubles as the social hub. Maybe 4,000 people. One blinking yellow light at the main intersection. A diner called Dots that's had the same pie in the display case since I was in pigtails. Everybody's in everybody's business, not out of meanness, just habit. Callaways, that's my family, were what people around there called solid. My dad, Ronald, put in over 20 years managing day-to-day operations at a lumber processing plant before the place folded. My mom, Patricia, ran the church bake sale every spring and signed up for every volunteer committee that came her way. From the outside, we were the picture of a well-raised family. Kind neighbors hold up as an example. Tap through the front door, though, and the rules were different. I didn't get my own house key until I was 21. Couldn't take the family car past a 15-mile radius without checking in first. When I landed my first job at 13, bussing tables at Dot's Diner after school, every single paycheck got swallowed up into a joint account my mom had opened without asking me. For your future, she said. I never once laid eyes on a statement. Never thought to question it. That's just how things ran in our house. I finished high school at the very top of my class. My guidance counselor, Mr. Dawkins, actually called me into his office senior year and laid out a whole plan, scholarships, state schools, the works. I carried those brochures home feeling something close to hope. My dad flipped through one page, set the whole stack on the counter, and said colleges were for kids who couldn't figure out how to be useful. That was the end of that conversation. So I stayed. Cooked. Cleaned. Kept the house running. Sat through dinner every single night while my dad told me all the ways the world outside was broken and dangerous and not a place for a girl like me. A roof, 3 meals, and your family right here. What more could you possibly want? I heard that so many times I started to wonder if maybe he was right. The shift happened the week I turned 23. No explosion. No big blow-up. I was standing at that kitchen sink washing a cast-iron pan that had lived in that house longer than I had, and something cracked open in my chest. Real quiet. Almost gentle. Like a window easing up after years of being painted shut. I'm going to be doing this exact thing at 45 and I'll never have chosen it. That thought scared me more than anything Ronald Calloway had ever said to me. So the next morning I walked to the public library on Maple. Sat down at one of the computers in the back, the slow ones with the grimy keyboards and the 15-minute logout timers. I set up a fresh email address that had nothing to do with the family account my mom had access to. Totally new. Just mine. Then I hunted around and found a posting from a hardware supply place called Ridgecrest Supply over in Fairview, about half an hour east. Customer service position. Full-time. Decent pay. Benefits after 3 months. I put together a quick application and sent it off before I could second-guess myself into backing down. 2 days passed. They wrote back. Interview request. Thursday at 10. I sat there in that library chair and read that email probably 4 times. Then I logged off, walked home, and the whole way back my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not the scared kind of shaking. The other kind. Kind that happens when something you gave up on a long time ago suddenly feels possible again. That night at the dinner table, I noticed something. My dad kept sneaking glances at me in this way he never normally did. Like he was watching for something. My mom's back was to us the whole meal, even after the dishes were done. Nobody said anything out of the ordinary. But the air felt different. Like a room right before a storm rolls in. Thursday morning I drove to Fairview. The guy doing interviews at Ridgecrest Supply was named Clark, somewhere in his late 40s, reading glasses on a cord around his neck. He shook my hand at the door, had a nice energy to him. We sat down across from each other, and within about 30 seconds that energy just drained right out of his face. He set my application on the desk between us like it had suddenly gotten heavier. Amber, I need to ask you something straight. Go ahead. Is there anything on your record we ought to know about going in? No, sir. Not a thing. Never been charged with anything. He pulled his glasses off. Pinched the top of his nose. We got a call. Yesterday afternoon. Somebody told us you've got a felony theft on your record. Said it was over $1,000. Everything went still. I held onto the arms of that chair like it was the only solid thing in the room. That is not true, I said. My voice stayed steady. I don't know how. Whoever told you that lied. He looked at me for a long beat. I could see he wasn't sure. And I could also see it didn't matter how sure he was. He had a business to protect. I'm real sorry, he said. We can't go forward. I drove home without the radio. Didn't cry. Just stared at the road and breathed. When I pulled into the driveway, my dad was out front on the porch, magazine in his lap, same as any other afternoon. He didn't look up. Morning go okay, sweetheart? Fine. Good. Your mom's making chili tonight. I sat through dinner. Chili, cornbread, a glass of sweet tea. Mom chatted about the Hendersons getting a new dog. Dad said in the right places. And the whole time I sat there turning over the one thought I could not shake loose. They knew. I pushed it down. I told myself that was a crazy thing to think. I wouldn't be able to push it down much longer. Over the next 5 or 6 weeks, I sent in applications to 4 more places. A grocery store in Brentwood, a shipping depot out on Route 12, a nail salon in Glenport that needed a receptionist, and a little breakfast spot in Clayfield called the Sunrise Cafe that wanted counter help in the mornings. All 4 called me in. All 4 called it off within a couple of days. The grocery store said they'd filled the spot already. The depot just went quiet. The nail salon said they went with someone more experienced. But the Sunrise Cafe, that one played out differently. The owner, a heavy-set woman named Marge with reading glasses on a beaded chain, leaned across her counter and lowered her voice like she was doing me a real favor. That you've got a theft and fraud history. Said they were somebody from your community looking out for local businesses. A woman. Marge gave a slow nod. Community member looking out for local businesses. I sat on that all evening. Then that night, after both my parents had gone to bed, I crept down the hall to my mom's craft room. She kept that little room organized like a museum, bins of ribbon, stacks of fabric, every sewing tool in its spot. I slid open the desk drawer, pushed past the needle cushions and the measuring tape roll, and found it sitting right there underneath everything else. A small green spiral notebook. I opened it under the light from the hallway. Patricia's handwriting. Neat and rounded, the same as her grocery lists and the birthday cards she sent to cousins every year. Left column names. Ridgecrest Supply, Brentwood Fresh Market, Route 12 Depot, Glenport Nails, Sunrise Cafe. Right column, a red checkmark beside every single one. Every job I had applied to. Documented. Tracked. Checked off. I stood there with that notebook in my hands and felt the ground go out from under me. Not like a metaphor, like something physical. My knees actually buckled a little. This was not me being paranoid. This was not me reading into things. My mother was keeping a running list of every place I tried to work, and then making phone calls. I put the notebook back exactly how I found it. Walked to my room. Lay on my bed until morning with my eyes wide open, asking myself the same question on a loop. How are you supposed to protect yourself from the people who raised you? I didn't sleep at all. Come morning, I had that notebook sitting in the middle of the kitchen table before either of them came downstairs. My mom came in first, coffee mug already in her hand. She saw it and froze. The mug tilted. Coffee ran across the counter. You went through my things. Her voice broke before she even finished the sentence. I can't believe you went through my personal belongings. You called every place I applied, Mom. You told them I'm a felon. I did it because I am your mother. She pressed her hand flat against her chest. I am trying to keep you safe. You don't understand what's out there. I'm 23 years old. My dad walked in. He looked at the notebook on the table. He looked at me. Then he pulled out his chair and sat down like it was any other morning. We're looking out for you, he said. No heat in his voice at all. That was always the part that got under my skin, how utterly calm he stayed. You're not ready for what's outside this house. You never have been. You've never let me try. He didn't respond to that. Just said, let this go. Right now. I'm calling the police. He actually smiled a little. And what exactly are you going to tell them? That your mama made a few phone calls? They'll send you home. I looked at my mom, tears still streaming, coffee pooling on the counter. I looked at my dad, already reaching for the pepper shaker like we were just having breakfast. And I said the thing I'd been building up to for the past several years. If this doesn't stop today, I'm walking out of this house. He didn't blink. Then you walk out with nothing. No cash, no paperwork, nothing. I genuinely believed he was testing me. He was not. That night I packed what I could fit into a backpack. 2 outfits. Phone charger. Travel toothbrush. And the one photograph I had of Grandma Rose. Her in her garden, gloves on, squinting into the summer sun, grinning like she knew something good was about to happen. When I came downstairs, my mom was posted up in the hallway with her arms folded. Crying was done. Her face had gone somewhere else entirely. Hard. Locked up. You leave this house, she said, and you are done in this family. My dad stood just behind her shoulder. Arms crossed. Didn't say a word. Just took up space. I stepped past both of them and out onto the porch and pulled up my bank account on my phone. $0. 0 cents. Years of waitressing tips. Birthday money from Grandma Rose. Every last dollar gone. My mom had been listed on that account since I opened it at 16. Legally, she didn't need a single signature from me to drain it dry. I turned back to the screen door. I need my birth certificate. And my social security card. Those live in this house, my dad said from inside. He reached over and flipped the porch light off. I walked away from that house at just after 10 on a Tuesday night in November. Backpack on my shoulders. Phone dying. $11 in my coat pocket. No ID. No destination. No clue what I was doing. I ended up sitting on the curb outside the Sunoco station at the edge of town, under those big white lights that hum all night. Trucks rolled in and out. The young woman working the register looked at me once through the glass and then decided she hadn't. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed one last time. Come home. Apologize first. Then we'll talk. I powered it off. Not because I was tough. Because it was at 4% and I couldn't afford to waste it on his texts. $11. Nowhere to go. And for the first time in 23 years, not one single person telling me which direction to walk. 2 days after that night, I found my way to the Millhaven Women's Resource Center, a converted church hall out on Madison that ran a small emergency shelter. 16 beds. 1 bathroom. Kitchen that smelled like vegetable soup and pine sol no matter what time of day it was. I got there because the same cashier from the Sunoco, the one who'd looked away that first night, slid a handwritten address across the counter to me on my second morning of washing up in the gas station bathroom. No comment. No look of pity. Just the address on a torn napkin, and then she went back to her register. The woman in charge of the shelter was named Brenda Cole. Early 50s. Natural haircut close. Reading glasses constantly slipping down her nose. She did not ask me what happened or why I was there. She handed me a clean towel and pointed to a bed near the window. "Nobody here owes anybody an explanation," she said. "You just gotta show up every day." I was younger than every other resident by more than a decade. I started working on replacing my documents right away, filed a mail request for a new birth certificate, got told to expect it in 6 to 8 weeks, went to the DMV about a temporary ID and kept getting bounced around without the right supporting paperwork. Come back in a few weeks. Come back again after that. While I waited, I helped out around the shelter however I could. Washed dishes after meals, ran a mop through the common room, reorganized the supply closet that nobody had touched in what looked like years. Staying useful was the only thing keeping my head above water. I kept sending out job applications. Pushed farther out this time, 30-40 miles away. New towns. Places my parents had never set foot in. I kept thinking if I just got far enough outside their world, the calls would stop. Wrong. I found a posting for a front desk position at a small property management company called Greenleaf Realty in a town called Grover City, about 40 minutes south. The owner, a laid-back guy named Terrence, interviewed me on a Tuesday and told me he'd have an answer by Friday at the latest. Friday morning he called. "Hey, Amber. I'm really sorry about this. We're not going to be able to move forward." My stomach dropped. "Can I ask what happened?" A pause stretched out longer than it should have. "We got an email. Came with a file attached. Looked like a background screening report. Listed a fraud charge on your record. Not a phone call this time. An email with an attachment. My dad had managed daily operations at that lumber processing plant for over 20 years. He knew exactly how to put together paperwork that looked official. He had the equipment to do it. And now he was using all of it to follow me 40 miles from home and kill my chances before I even got started. They'd leveled up. That same night, Brenda pulled me into the shelter kitchen and lowered her voice. "I've been meaning to tell you something. About 5 or 6 weeks back, a woman came by asking for you by name. I didn't give her any information, that's our policy. But she left a card." Brenda fished it out of her cardigan pocket, slightly bent at the corner. I held on to it because something about her felt off from what I normally see. Sandra Meeks, licensed private investigator, state of Indiana. My stomach went cold in a different way. My first instinct, this was my dad's next move. Hire somebody to find me, report back on my location, maybe try to get me removed from the only safe place I had. "What did she look like?" I asked. "Older woman. 60s maybe. Silver hair, real tidy. She was calm and polite, and she didn't push when I said I couldn't help her. She just left the card." Brenda paused. "Honestly? She didn't remind me of trouble. She reminded me of somebody who was genuinely worried about a person." I tucked the card into my jeans pocket. Couldn't call. Not yet. The risk felt too big. But I also couldn't throw it away. Every time I did laundry, I transferred that card to the clean pair of jeans. Something about it nagged at me. The fact that she'd shown up at the door instead of calling anonymously. That she'd used her real name. That she hadn't pushed when Brenda held the line. That wasn't how my parents moved. They operated in the shadows through fake names and made-up stories. This woman rang the front doorbell in the middle of the day. Month 6 at the shelter brought 2 things. The first was good. My replacement birth certificate came in the mail and the DMV finally processed my temporary ID. I held that flimsy little card in my hands and stared at my own face on it like I was meeting myself for the first time. My name. My photo. Something that said I existed officially, independently. Small thing. Felt enormous. The second thing happened about a week later. Brenda asked me to step into her office. She closed the door, which she never did. Her door was always propped open with an old soup can. "We got a call this morning," she said. A woman claiming to be a licensed counselor. "She told me you have a history of violent and unstable behavior and that you're putting the other women here at risk." The room went cold. "That's my mother," I said. "Yeah." Brenda nodded once, slow. "I figured it wasn't legit. Real counselors don't operate this way. But I want to be upfront with you. If she starts filing complaints through official channels at the county level, my hands might get tied. I can't promise I can protect your spot here if it goes that far." I sat there and let that land. They had come after my job applications. They had forged documents. They had emptied my bank account and locked away my identity papers. And now they were reaching into the one place I could sleep at night and trying to pull that out from under me too. Here's the thing about anger. It's hot and it's fast and it burns through itself pretty quickly. What came up in me sitting in that little office wasn't anger. It was something steadier. Colder. Like the way a room feels after a window finally clears of fog and you can see the whole yard laid out plain as day. I was done reacting. Time to get ahead of this. Millhaven does a town council meeting every first Monday of the month. Folding chairs in the old armory on oak, a podium with a mic that squeals, maybe 25 people on a normal night. Brenda mentioned one afternoon, real casual, that my dad had put his name on the speaker list for that month. I showed up. I took a seat all the way in the back corner near the side exit. Hadn't been in any public place in Millhaven since the night I left home. Ronald Calloway walked up to that podium at 7:25 wearing his good blue shirt, the one Patricia kept pressed and hung in the closet for occasions that mattered. His voice wobbled just a little on the first line. It was practiced. I knew it the second I heard it. "I'm standing up here as a dad," he said. "My daughter left home and got pulled in by people who don't have her best interests at heart. She's living in a shelter right now while her family has an empty room waiting for her. I have done everything I know how to do. She won't come home." Long pause. Eyes down. "I'm asking the people of this community to help me bring my little girl back." Tricia was in the front row. Hands folded in her lap. Tears already going. The woman next to her, Mrs. Greer, who sorted mail at the post office, rubbed her arm. I could feel every head in that room turning toward me one by one. 40-some people sizing up the situation. The broken-hearted father at the mic. The ungrateful daughter in the back. Nobody called on me to speak. I opened my notebook and wrote down every single word my father said, word for word, without missing a beat. Then I slipped out before anyone could corner me. It had an effect. The produce manager at the Millhaven grocery store, his wife had been at that meeting, told me the position I'd asked about was no longer available. The guy at the gas station who used to give me a quick nod started looking past me like I was furniture. One of the regular shelter volunteers, a retired teacher named Doris, pulled me aside over soup one afternoon. "Sweetheart, don't you think maybe it's time to just go on back home? Your daddy is clearly torn up over this." I put my spoon down carefully. "Did you actually read the room at that meeting, Doris? Or did you just feel bad for the man at the mic?" She patted my hand like I was a child. "That poor man just wants his daughter home safe." I wanted to show her the texts. I wanted to pull out the mental image of that green notebook with its neat red check marks. I wanted to walk her through the forged documents and the fake counselor call. But here's what those months had taught me. When the person pointing the finger at you is already crying, it doesn't matter how solid your evidence is. Nobody in that room wants to hear it. My parents had turned the whole town into an extension of their reach. Every kind neighbor who believed my dad's story. Every church lady who'd wiped Patricia's tears. All of them, without knowing it, were part of the net. But I kept coming back to something Grandma Rose said to me one afternoon when I was around 20 years old. She'd driven over while my parents were out, and we'd sat on the back porch with glasses of sweet tea. She looked out over the yard for a long stretch before she spoke. "If things get really hard for you someday, sweetheart, somebody's going to show up. Don't be afraid of them when they do." I'd laughed. "Grandma, you're talking in riddles." She didn't laugh back. "I have known my son his whole life. I know exactly who he is. Those gray eyes of hers, steady as anything. And I've been making sure you'll have options." Then she changed the subject to whether the tomatoes were coming in yet. But right before she got in her car, she stopped and turned around. "I sold my house, Amber. Just want you to know I didn't spend that money. I hadn't known what to do with that. Filed it away. Forgot about it. Until one night in month 5, stretched out on my shelter bed staring at a water stain on the ceiling, it floated back up to me like something that had been waiting. Every word of it. That night I dug Sandra Meeks's card out of my jeans pocket and dialed the number. She picked up on the second ring. She came to the shelter the next morning at 8 sharp. Brenda buzzed her in. Sandra Meeks looked exactly the way Brenda had described. Silver hair pulled back clean, simple navy jacket, no jewelry, no fuss. She was carrying a brown leather briefcase, the kind that had seen real use. Creased along the edges. Brass clasps worn smooth. She sat down in the folding chair next to my bed. Almost everyone else had already headed out for the day. Sandra set that briefcase flat on the mattress between us, and I looked down at it and felt my chest squeeze. Pressed into the leather near the handle in faded stamped letters, in a style of handwriting I knew as well as my own name. "For Amber, when the time is right. Grandma Rose." I had to breathe for a second before I could say anything. "I'm Sandra Meeks," she said. "Licensed PI, State of Indiana. Your grandmother Rose hired me about 8 years back, right around the time she sold her house when you were about 18. 8 years. Grandma had set this in motion before I'd even thought about leaving. She paid me to keep tabs on your home situation over time," Sandra went on. "Her instructions were to find you the moment things crossed a certain line. That line got crossed when your mother called this shelter pretending to be a mental health professional. How long have you been watching?" "I started actively tracking the employer calls going on 3 years ago now. I have 31 recorded and documented contacts your mother made to businesses where you applied. I have copies of the fake reports your father sent from a throwaway email account. I have photographs. I have everything she said I'd eventually need." I stared at that briefcase. 8 years of my grandmother working quietly in the background. Watching. Preparing. Trusting that when the moment came, her plan would be ready. "She knew," I said. "She said she hoped she was wrong," Sandra said. "But she knew." My hands were shaking a little as I worked the clasp open. On top was a sealed envelope. Off-white, almost cream-colored. My name on the front in that familiar loopy cursive, the same way she'd signed every birthday card she ever sent me. I broke the seal. "Sweet girl, if this letter found you, then things got hard the way I was afraid they might. I want you to know that your father becoming who he became was never your fault, and it was never something you deserved. I watched the same pattern in my own marriage for most of my adult life before I finally found my way out. I know how quietly those walls go up. I know how normal the cage starts to feel. But I refuse to leave this world without giving you a door. What's in this case is yours. Every bit of it. Use it to build something, not to tear anyone down. Revenge will keep you stuck in the same story. Freedom will take you somewhere new. I love you in ways I wasn't always allowed to show. All my heart, Grandma Rose. I folded that letter and held it in both hands for a long moment. Sandra gave me the time. Then she opened the second section of the briefcase and laid a thick manila folder on the bed. Let me walk you through what's here. She showed me everything. 31 documented calls. Dates, phone numbers, full transcripts of what Patricia said on each one. The fake emailed reports, time-stamped, traced back to the Callaway home internet connection through digital records. And a set of photographs taken through the kitchen window during Sandra's check-in visits. Clear shots of that green notebook open on my mother's desk, the check marks visible in every frame. Can a lawyer actually use any of this? I asked. Every single piece. Indiana's a one-party recording state, and I held a valid license the whole time. The documentation is clean all the way through. She pulled out a thick yellow envelope from the bottom of the case. Upper left corner, Law Office of Marcus Webb, Fairview, Indiana. Inside, a stack of legal papers. Tabbed and paper-clipped. Sandra talked while I read. When your grandmother sold her house, she got $280,000. She put the whole amount into a trust in your name alone. After she passed, the term's locked. Nobody can touch it, redirect it, or claim it except you. It's been building quietly ever since. Government bonds, savings instruments, the works. I found the balance summary page. $318,000. Your father has no knowledge this trust exists, Sandra said. Your grandmother gave Mr. Webb one firm instruction. Under no circumstances was he to contact Ronald or Patricia for any reason. I set the papers down on the blanket. The mattress gave under the weight of everything. Or maybe that was me. Why didn't she just hand this over when she was alive and healthy? Sandra was quiet for a beat. She wrote about that in her notes to Mr. Webb. Her exact reasoning was this: if she gave it to you while your father still had influence over your life, he'd find a way to it before you could protect yourself. You had to get free first. The money had to come after, not instead of your own strength. She let that settle. To release the funds, you need to go to Marcus Webb's office in person with a valid ID. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the temporary state ID I'd finally gotten 2 weeks before. It was the right time. She had made sure of it. Marcus Webb ran his practice out of the second floor of a building on Center Street in Fairview, up a narrow staircase, past a door with gold letters on the glass. His waiting room had 2 chairs, a side table with old magazines, and a small fern that looked like it had survived things. Webb himself was somewhere in his late 60s. Thin, wire-framed glasses. He got up and shook my hand with both of his before I'd even made it all the way through the door. Your grandmother could not stop talking about you, he said. Please sit down. He verified my documents carefully and thoroughly. Everything matched up. He pulled out a single sheet, slid it across the desk, handed me a pen. The trust is open as of today. The funds are fully available to you. I signed. My hand was rock steady. Then he said, There's one more thing Rose asked me to do. He opened his top drawer and produced a business card. Asterisk Lisa Harmon, civil law, defamation, and personal harm. Fairview, Indiana asterisk. She told me that if things had gone the way she feared, you'd probably need a good attorney before you'd need anything else. I took the liberty of calling Lisa this morning. She can fit you in at 2 o'clock if you want to go today. My grandmother arranged a lawyer too? He smiled just slightly. She arranged for the possibility. She genuinely hoped you'd never need it. I was in Lisa Harmon's office before too. By 4 o'clock she had gone through every page of Sandra's documentation, front to back, twice. Here's where things stand, she said, glasses pushed up on her head. What was done to you has a name in Indiana law and it's actionable. Telling employers someone has a criminal record when they don't, that's a clear-cut civil wrong. We don't even have to spend time arguing about whether it caused you harm because the harm is documented across 3 years. Lost income, lost opportunities, emotional damage, a period of homelessness. We build the case around all of it. She looked straight at me. I'd like to file before the end of this week. Ronald Calloway got served the following Thursday morning at 7:42 a.m. Process server caught him checking the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Mrs. Greer from the post office happened to be out on her morning walk 2 doors down. She watched the whole thing, the envelope, my dad's face going blank, the way he stood completely still reading the first page for nearly a full minute. Patricia was served 1 hour later in the cereal aisle of the Food Mart on Main. By lunchtime, half of Millhaven had heard. By supper, the rest had. My dad called my number 14 times that afternoon. I let every single call roll. Lisa had been clear. Nothing goes through me directly anymore. That evening, an unknown number sent me a text. You are going to regret this decision. I am still your father. Lisa screenshotted it, timestamped it, and added it to the file. Exhibit 38. Patricia started making her own rounds within a day. Coffee shop conversations, church parking lot run-ins, phone calls to neighbors. Her version: my daughter is taking us to court because we loved her too much. But something had already shifted. Because in a small town, everybody talks, and court filings are public record. Within a week of the filing, people were pulling up the actual complaint documents on their phones. And what those documents said wasn't complicated family situation. They said 31 calls to employers, forged screening reports emailed under a fake account, a fraudulent call to a women's shelter impersonating a mental health professional. Tom Haskell had been friends with my dad since they played ball together in middle school. He ran into Patricia outside the Sunoco station. Patricia, the documents say you called all those places she applied. Is that actually true? She got in her car without answering and drove away without getting the gas she'd come for. My dad put his name on the speaker list for the next town council meeting. Same room. Same podium. Same squealing mic. But this time when I walked in, there were close to 70 people packed into that armory. People who never showed up for these meetings. Standing along the back wall. I sat 3 rows from the front, right side aisle seat. Lisa Harmon sat directly next to me. Legal pad ready. Pen uncapped. An expression on her face that told you absolutely nothing about what she was thinking. Ronald went up at 7:22. Same good blue shirt. Same steady voice. Most of you have known me my whole life. I built a life in this town. Coached your kids baseball. I served this community. And now my own daughter, who I have tried every way I know how to protect, is suing her own parents. Grip tightening on the sides of the podium. She's been influenced by people who don't know our family. Who saw an opportunity. I'm asking the people who do know us to stand by what they know. He looked over at me. I looked back. Didn't move. Didn't look away. Lisa stood up without any drama at all. My name is Lisa Harmon. I'm a licensed Indiana attorney and I represent Amber Calloway. Her voice was even. Unhurried. Like she was reading a grocery list. A civil complaint has been filed in county court and is part of the public record. I'd invite anyone who wants to understand the full picture to pull up those documents and read them directly rather than relying on any one person's account. She sat back down. 8 seconds of complete silence followed. I counted them. Council chair cleared his throat. Moved to the next item on the agenda. My dad stood at that podium a moment longer than he needed to. Then he walked back to his seat. He did not look at me again for the rest of the night. Court issued a protection order not long after. 500 feet of distance required. No contact of any kind, not direct, not through a third party, not through social media or letters or passed along messages. Ronald violated it inside of a week. He used his old friend Dale's phone. Dale had no idea what he was stepping into and sent me 2 words, not over. Lisa filed the violation documentation the same afternoon. Ronald got a formal warning from the judge. One more incident and he'd be looking at contempt charges. The civil case built fast from there. Terrence from Greenleaf Realty in Grover City contacted Lisa's office on his own and said the email was still sitting in his inbox and he was prepared to testify. A clerk from Ridgecrest Supply came forward too. He'd made a note in my file the day he got that phone call, written down the date and what was said. He told Lisa it had bothered him the whole time. I didn't ask either of them to do that. I didn't campaign around town. I didn't run a social media account detailing my side of things. The evidence existed. Court records were public. People of Millhaven had eyes to read with. Ronald got himself a lawyer, a one-man office 2 counties over, someone who looked a little overwhelmed the moment he saw Sandra's full evidence file. That lawyer called Lisa and said settlement was the smart play. Ronald said no. Flat out. I won't settle with my own daughter. His lawyer withdrew from the case 8 days later. Ronald filed his own handwritten response to the court. In full it read, "This dispute is a private family matter. Court has no right to intervene in how a father chooses to protect his child." The judge ruled otherwise. When Ronald skipped the hearing without explanation or notice, Lisa moved for a default judgment. Court granted it. 3 years of false criminal accusations. 3 years of deliberately derailing my ability to support myself. Judgment in my favor, $92,000. I was at Marcus Webb's office when the notice came through on his computer. He printed it out and pushed it across the desk to me without saying a word at first. After a moment, "How are you feeling?" "Worn out," I said. Which was exactly right. That same week Webb offered me a job. Wasn't out of pity. He said that plainly up front. He'd been watching me work my way through Sandra's files, build out the timeline, cross-reference the documentation. He said I had a natural instinct for keeping information organized and trackable. "I've been needing someone to run the front office for 2 years," he said. "You'd be good at it." I started the following Monday. $10 an hour. Health coverage after 60 days. A desk near the window with a little succulent somebody had left behind that I decided was now mine. With the trust fund money, I found a 1-bedroom place in Fairview, ground floor of a small building, own entrance, little kitchen, a bathroom door with a lock on the inside. Key was mine. Nobody else had a copy. I bought a used Nissan Sentra with just under 100,000 miles on it, opened a checking account with my name and nobody else's on it, and walked into a grocery store and filled a cart with whatever I actually wanted without explaining my choices to a single person on earth. The apartment was so quiet it took me weeks to get used to it. No one asking for my whereabouts. No one monitoring my phone. No one running ahead of me making sure every door stayed closed. Just silence. And the slow, spreading feeling of a life that was finally starting to belong to me. 3 months after the judgment, Brenda forwarded me a letter that had shown up at the shelter addressed to my old room. Patricia had sent it to the old address, not technically a direct violation of the protection order, but right up against the line of it. I read it at my own kitchen table. My kitchen table. Amber. I am still your mother. Your father told me to tell you he is sorry. We'd like you to come for Thanksgiving dinner. It would mean a lot to put this all behind us and just be a family again. I read it 3 times. Your father told me to tell you he is sorry, not that he was sorry. Not his words. Just a relay, like she was passing along a phone message. To put this all behind us, not I was wrong. Not I should never have made those calls. Not I should not have drained your account and hidden your documents and tried to get you thrown out of a shelter. Just put it behind us. As if the previous few years had been a rough patch we could agree to forget. I sat with that letter for a long time. Made a cup of coffee. Fed my cat, a little orange tabby I'd gotten from the Fairview Animal Shelter and named Rosie because honestly, how could I not? Then I wrote back through Lisa the way the protection order required. Mom, I hope you're taking care of yourself. But what happened wasn't a misunderstanding that can be smoothed over. You made 31 calls to employers and told them I was a criminal. You emptied my bank account and kept the documents I needed to live an independent life. You called the shelter where I was sleeping and tried to have me removed. These are not things that get put behind us. Please honor the court order. Don't reach out again. Amber. Sealed it. Drove to the post office in Fairview. The Fairview one, not the one in Millhaven where Mrs. Greer would clock me and have it all over town by sundown. Went home. Made pasta. Sat on the couch. Rosie watched me eat from the armrest like a tiny judge evaluating my technique. Best meal of my life, I'm not even joking. Ronald never voluntarily paid the judgment. Couldn't it turned out. Lisa placed a lien on the house on Birch Street, the one I grew up in, the one with the porch where he sat and read his magazine the morning after my first failed interview, acting like he didn't know a single thing. Before anyone could buy it, the court's claim had to be settled first. Sold for $158,000. By the time the lien was cleared, the realtor took their share, and the back taxes Ronald had apparently been putting off for years got settled. He walked away from the house he'd lived in his whole adult life with barely enough left for a security deposit somewhere new. He and Patricia moved to a manufactured home community about 25 minutes outside of Millhaven. Close enough to still do their grocery shopping at the same food mart. Not close enough to run into the people who used to wave from their front porches. Ronald still hasn't said he was wrong. Not in any setting. Not to anyone I know of. Word gets around in a small place, and what I've heard is that he tells people his daughter got manipulated by a lawyer who wanted a payout. He's told that story enough times by now that I think he genuinely believes it. Some people have just decided the story they tell about themselves is more important than the truth. But Patricia caught me off guard. Sandra called me a few months after everything settled, one of her occasional check-ins. She'd heard through a contact that Patricia had started meeting with a therapist on her own. Hadn't mentioned it to Ronald. And in one of those sessions, she'd apparently said, "I think what I did to my daughter was genuinely wrong. I don't know how to live with that yet. I don't know what to do with that. I'm not ready to forgive her. I might never be. But I've learned I can hold two things at the same time without them canceling each other out. The woman who made 31 documented calls to sabotage her own daughter's life. And the woman who eventually, quietly, told the truth to a stranger in a small office. Both of those are real. Both of those are her. Being a complicated person doesn't entitle you to unlimited access to someone's life. Getting better doesn't automatically mean the people you hurt owe you a front row seat to watch it happen. Sometimes healing just looks like space. And time. And a door with a lock that you control. I'm 26 years old. I work front office at a law firm in Fairview. Taking paralegal classes 2 nights a week at the community college. I have my own apartment, my own car, a savings account growing in my name, and a cat named Rosie who has claimed every soft surface in my apartment as her personal property, and I am completely fine with that. I don't have contact with my parents right now. That door isn't permanently closed. But I'm the one who holds the key. That part isn't up for negotiation. My grandma Rose never fully got free herself. She spent the better part of her life inside a marriage that looked fine on the outside and cost her everything on the inside. By the time she got clear, she was well past the age when most people stop starting over, living in a little rented apartment, tending a small garden, and sitting on a plan she'd been quietly building for years. She couldn't rewrite her own story. But she rewrote mine. She started laying groundwork 8 years before I ever needed it. Hired a private investigator. Set up a trust fund in my name. Wrote a letter I hope she knew I'd one day be okay enough to cry over. Sealed everything up in a briefcase and spent the rest of her life hoping I'd never have to open it. That is what love that doesn't control looks like. That is what love that doesn't need to own you looks like. If you are out there right now, in a shelter on a couch that isn't yours, staring at the ceiling of a room you can't make feel like home, and you're wondering whether wanting a life of your own makes you selfish or ungrateful or a bad kid, it doesn't. It never did. Wanting to earn your own living isn't disloyalty. Wanting your own space isn't ingratitude. Walking away from people who are actively working to destroy you isn't abandonment. It is the most basic form of self-respect there is. Grandma Rose's letter ended with this line. Asterisk, you were always worth fighting for, baby girl. Now go prove it to yourself, asterisk. I'm working on it every single day. If something in this story felt personal to you, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear that they are not crazy, they are not ungrateful, and they are not alone, send them this video. That's really all I'm asking. Like if this meant something to you. Subscribe if you want to hear what comes next. See you there in the next story.